from the mind of Christ.
Yes.
Looking upon all that stuff that went down from the mind of Christ, like being able to see God as the Good Samaritan, being able to see Abba all over in the Old Testament, it's like it's doing something inside of me.
Yeah.
It's creating like a stability I hadn't experienced before. Where, like I said, I wouldn't have known that it was causing me a problem. But seeing the two as different is a problem. It's a problem in our hearts. It's a problem in our theology. It's our problem. It's a problem in knowing God. What we don't see is that in the old, it was a mystery. It wasn't a mystery because God hid it. It was a mystery because He was speaking spirit and we were seeing carnally.
Yes.
And so it was a great mystery, right? But that mystery that was all there was made flesh in Jesus.
Right.
But it's not that it changed. It's that it became flesh and stood in the midst of us, right?
Right.
To reveal a spiritual truth to a carnal people, right? But the truth that it revealed is the same truth that was being revealed in the Old Testament.
It's always been.
It's always been that way. It's always been the same. It's always been declaring the same thing. Now listen, so people don't get confused. Even though the law was declaring grace and declaring Christ, Christ still had to come. Okay? Because an animal sacrifice could never deliver us from death. Okay? So when we say that the law isn't evil and the law isn't good, or that the law wasn't against the promises of God, that doesn't mean that we're now saying that that law could give us life.
To salvation. Right.
Right? No. That law can only point to what would give life. That law could never produce the pouring out of the Holy Spirit. Because there had to be a human being that represented all human beings that would believe on Abba for life. Now, when a human being believes on Abba for life, and that human being now has authority over all flesh, then that allows for the spirit of Abba to be poured out and made available to all flesh. Okay? The law could never do that. It could only point to what would do that. Right? So while the law was all the time actually declaring grace and the goodness of God, even had we seen the grace and the goodness of God in that law, Jesus would have still had to come and then manifested everything that law was talking about in Himself to a T.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Does that make sense for
The
everybody?
law was powerless to bring salvation.
Right. The law was powerless to conquer our death, but the law was all the time telling us about God's goodness to come and conquer our death.
Yes, and that's why